All right, so joining me now is Kuehl, the creator of Benchmob blog, as well as Utility Sports, as well as Jacob of Jacoblocks on YouTube. How you boys doing today?
Doing good, man. Doing good. How about you?
I'm pretty good. Yeah, I'm excited to get into this podcast. It should be a fun one for sure.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so today we're going to be doing role player all stars. With the all-star festivities going on this weekend, there's a lot of praise to the stars, and rightfully so, but we just want to shine a light on some underrepresented guys. So we're going to be doing role player all stars today. We each have five role player all stars for you guys. And just to qualify for this list, you have to average under 15 points a game, and you can't have made an all-star team within the past two seasons. It's a little bit ambiguous, but we feel like this is the best way to sort of put a limit and separate role players from stars and even younger stars. So yeah, let's just kick off the list, boys.
Yeah, all right, Jacob, you want to go first?
Sure. I'll start off. I mean, you guys can see on the sweatshirt, I am a Knicks fan.
hmm
When you talk about role players, I feel like it would be wrong to not bring up this guy as a Knicks fan. That's, of course, Josh Hart. I,
hmm
at first, wasn't sure if I wanted to include him because he's kind of creeping towards that, like, Derek White status where it's like he's such a good
hmm
he's such a good role player. Should he be an all-star? He obviously didn't make it this year. I don't think he will make it in his career, but when you talk about role players, Josh Hart is one of the best in the league. Obviously everyone knows the rebounding, the hustle plays, but also fantastic in transition. His playmaking has really surprised me a lot this season, and he steps up whenever the Knicks need him to, including last night against the Pacers, where he had 30 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, just a stat sheet stuffer. And I really value a lot of versatility when it comes to players. And I mean, Josh Hart's as versatile as it gets, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously as a Knicks fan, you know him best and you touched on a lot, but I think even dating back to when he first got traded to New York, like his first playoff run, he was making all the plays, all the hustle plays, hitting shots. He's kind of grown to embody the Knicks, I feel like, and the type of basketball that Tom Thibodeau wants his team to play. I love the Derek White comparison. I don't know if he's quite there yet, but he's definitely getting there. Like with the 30 ball last night, like that's impressive stuff. Great player. Built for the playoffs, built to help that team win the championship. Absolutely.
Who you got, Finn?
Yeah, so my first guy is someone who is currently having the best shooting season in Detroit basketball history. That is, of course, Malik Beasley, who recently he set the record for most threes made in a season by a Piston already, and we're what, like 50 games in. He's second in the league in 3-point makes right now. Uh, he's shooting a career high from deep on a career high in attempts. His shooting has just been so huge for the young Pistons as they've grown into a competent team, a type of team that we didn't see last year when they lost 28 straight. He's my probably sixth man of the year right now, especially looks like DeAndre Hunter is going to be moving into the starting lineup. So he's having a phenomenal year. Had to mention him. Buck legend as well.
I feel like there was a lot of people talking about Cade Cunningham and the Pistons as a whole, and I was on the side of just he needs real NBA talent next to him and he needs shooting next to him. And Malik Beasley brings both of those, and I think that he has been such a great fit in Detroit, and they've been able to play off each other. There's some nights where Malik Beasley is like their second best player, which is crazy to say, but that's how good he's really been playing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he himself had a 30 ball the other night without in a game where Cade didn't play. He's been able to just take over and get hot. Yeah, bringing a ton of value off the bench. And it's interesting because he is currently on a minimum deal, has been for the last 2 years. And you would have thought after last year in Milwaukee that he outperformed that, but he didn't. And so it'll be interesting to see how much he gets paid this offseason. I know he loves Detroit, and so he could get a bag from them and hopefully play with Cade long term because he's like 30 at the oldest, if I'm not mistaken. So it seems like he's found a big home in Detroit. It's been a lot of fun to watch him.
Yeah, for sure. I think those are two great ones. Just the way Malik Beasley has really provided the Pistons with the spark off the bench has been huge, and his fit with a Cade as a floor spacer has been massive as well. And then Jacob, you brought up Josh Hart, obviously, and I think he's just been flat out one of the best role players in the league, and he's really proven his value to the Knicks. I think he's equally been as valuable as OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges. So I think he's been massive this season. I'm sticking with a similar theme as Finn's with spark plugs. I'm going to go with Peyton Pritchard of my Boston Celtics. think he's definitely been one of the best bench players in the league, and I really wasn't totally expecting him to take this offensive jump. He's always been a great player, especially as a shooter, but this year we've seen a lot more of his shot creation ability and
Hmm.
improved playmaking, a little bit of improved defense as well. He's just really been one of the Celtics' most important players, especially as Drew Holiday is having somewhat of a down season as he ages. He's first in the NBA in terms of bench points. He's also first in terms of bench threes. So I just think that's two really important stats, and I think he's sort of at the forefront along with Malik Beasley in those six man of the year discussions. And another cool stat I found out about him while doing research for this is that he ranks 94th in offensive estimated plus minus and 92nd
Mm.
in estimated plus minus overall. So I just think those advanced stats sort of underscores impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's cool about Pritchard is that for his first few years in the league, like he often just got in garbage time. Boston's obviously like a really deep team. He was young and he really took advantage of his garbage time minutes, used those to develop and kept his head down, kept grinding. And here he is in year five, if I'm not mistaken. And he's having this big breakout year. So that's been really cool to see. So is he your sixth man of the year right now, you think, Eamon?
I might be a little biased, but I think I would have to go with Pritchard just based off the impact on winning and how important he's been to the team. I do think Malik Beasley has a really solid case as well, and the Pistons have been winning some games as they're currently in the playoff picture in the East. But just Pritchard's importance to one of the best teams in the league, I think, gives him the slight nod for me.
Yeah,
The rich
that's
get
fair. It's tough
richer.
to. Oh yeah, go ahead, Jacob. My
No,
bad.
I was saying the rich get richer. You know, the Celtics
Mm,
getting these
hmm.
guys just to come in and just play quality minutes. You know, again, as a Knicks fan, it hurts, but I'm really happy to see Peyton Pritchard finally really getting a true role now and doing well in it.
Yeah, I can give a second guy if you guys want. Then, the next guy I had is actually another sixth man of the year candidate. This guy's a little bit more of a dark horse, I would say, but I could really see him creeping up lists soon, and that is Ty Jerome of the Cavaliers. I mean, this is a guy who's scoring on almost 50, 40, 90 splits off the bench for Cleveland. He's got on some insane heaters. He's just been huge for what's maybe been the best team in the NBA. And he's really on track, I think, to start playing a lot better now that Karis LeVert is gone. He's going to have more shots off the bench. And so he might really cook post All Star break, but he's been having a great year. Kind of came out of nowhere. So I had to shout him out.
Yeah, no, I really like Ty Jerome for the fact that he fits in almost perfectly with the two guards that start for the Cavs and Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. He's able to play off the ball and kind of let them rock out and be like the two guard next to them, you know, catch and shoot threes and stuff like that. But then also he's able to create with the ball in his hand, whether that's scoring or playmaking for the rest of the team. He's been a huge surprise for me. I was not expecting him to have anywhere near this type of season, but he's been super impactful on the best team of basketball.
Yeah, the meme with Ty Jerome was like early in the preseason in like September, I think. Kenny Atkinson said something about Ty Jerome being like the MVP of September. And I remember seeing that quote and just like everyone was kind of just like, okay, like whatever that means. Last season I think he only played 5 games. He was hurt. And so like kind of coming in this year, it's like, okay, Ty Jerome, like MVP of September, but I mean, now he's been huge. I can see why Kenny Atkinson liked him. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great pick. To Jacob's point, I really like how he can fit in next to those guards or sort of run the bench unit when either Mitchell or Garland is off the floor. And I think he has really good chemistry with Mobley. Just a really smart player overall, both as a shooter and a playmaker. I think he just makes a really well rounded impact, and I've really liked watching him this year.
Mhm. Yeah, and last thing on him, what I like about him, as well as Garland and Donovan Mitchell, all three of them, I think, really like they've bought into Cleveland's defensive culture. They're smaller guys. Jerome at least isn't like the most athletic, but they compete, and that really helps Cleveland click on that end, especially. And that's another reason why he fits in well next to Garland and Mitchell, because he'll get in there and get some steals, disrupt a little bit.
Speaking of buying in, this fits in perfectly with my second guy that I'll bring up, and that is Russell Westbrook. I
Mm.
was a huge fan of the Russell Westbrook signing this offseason. I know on Twitter there were people trashing it, and there's some people that just trash Westbrook because of, you know, his name being Russell Westbrook. He's gonna have those haters. But watching him play this season, specifically alongside Nikola Jokic, it has been everything I expected and more. I would love how their two-man game, where it's Russ sometimes sets the pick and is going on the short roll, or it's the traditional pick and roll where Jokic is setting it, Russ running with the ball handler. Them playing off each other has been amazing. Russ has really empowered some of the bench guys too, like a Julian Strother who's having a pretty solid season, Peyton Watts, and Russ has been playing so good. He started off as a bench guy, came into the starting role, and that's when the Denver Nuggets started really getting rolling on the season. A real big shout out to Russell Westbrook, who's really bought into this kind of do it all type of role player. It's not many times where we see an MVP caliber player kind of make that transition to extend his career and be those role player type of guys. Russell Westbrook is doing that to perfection.
Yeah, so here's my question then, guys. Would you start Russell Westbrook in the playoffs if you're Denver? Because we often see guys who don't shoot well, like they have a hard time. Look at Josh Giddey last year for the Thunder, and I think Westbrook brings a lot of value in how he can play make and like you can use him on the ball and he can cut, but like the shooting could be a problem. So what do you guys think? What do you think his role would be in the postseason?
I think that's a great question. I think I would continue to start Westbrook until we see signs that it becomes a problem. So, say if you get to the playoffs and they go down 2-0 or 2-1, whatever, and Westbrook's really struggling to shoot, then maybe pull him from the starting lineup. But the Nuggets just have such a strong record. I don't know it off the top of my head with him in the starting lineup that I think you just sort of have to start him. And he's just been such a perfect fit for this team, like Jacob was saying, and he really provides them with a nice source of energy as well. And he's been really impactful on defense. So I do think that it's definitely worth continuing to start him. And I also think in terms of floor spacing, it's definitely a problem for the Nuggets as they're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. However, when you have a guy like Jokic, I feel like your floor spacing is just so much better, especially how good of a shooter he's been this year. So I think some of those problems can sort of be negated just because of Jokic's greatness.
Yeah, his shooting is an issue, but the Denver Nuggets as a whole have a real hard time shooting the ball at times. So even if you swap him out for like a Christian Brown who's shooting it well, but still not like a super high volume type of guy, or Aaron Gordon, depending on what lineups you really want to look at, it's not like they're holding a sharpshooter off their bench that they could just easily swap out. So I would assume that Russ would start throughout the playoffs. Like you guys said too, if there's a situation where they're down 0-2 or 0-3 or something, obviously changes have to be made. But I think he's done well enough where he deserves that.
Yeah, I think more so than like a Josh Giddey type. Russell Westbrook seems like someone who would really like do whatever it takes to be out there and compete. And we've seen him be successful in the playoffs with the Clippers in recent years. I think it was 2023 where he had some huge games after Kawhi went down. So it'll be interesting to see, but I definitely believe he could yeah, he can make it work out, having a phenomenal year.
Yeah, for sure. I've just overall been so impressed by him. Westbrook is definitely a guy I've been somewhat critical of in the past, but this Nuggets fit has really worked out perfectly, and I'm honestly not too surprised just because of how great Jokic is that he's been able to make this work. But I'm definitely a little bit surprised to the degree that it's been able to work, and he's just been super impressive this season. So I'm glad you brought him up for sure. My next player is Scottie Pippen Jr. I mean, when you look at this Grizzlies team, they're definitely one of the deepest teams in the league. And I had kind of trouble picking just one Grizzly, but I feel like it was really important that I picked at least one player from this team just because they've had so many good role guys. I ended up going with Scottie Pippen Jr. I just really like his game. He's a very high IQ player, excellent passer, really good rebounder and defender for his size. He's only 6'1" or 6'2", but he's very active on the boards. He's a very good perimeter defender. He's very intelligent in that area. He has a very impressive defensive field goal percentage of 42, which
Mhm.
is just super impressive for his size. So I just wanted to give him a shout out, especially John Morant. He's been missing a good amount of games here and there, and Pippen has really filled in nicely. A former two-way player, so I'm just really happy for him, and I think it's been a great story. He's made a really strong impact on this Grizzlies team this year.
Yeah, I think he's really taken over the Tyus Jones role for them. Like you look at Grizzlies teams from a few years back, Tyus Jones was the guy who kept them afloat, winning games when Ja Morant missed time. And I think Scottie Pippen's been pretty much the same. His impact is slightly different because, like you mentioned, he brings a lot of defense. And looking back, like when he was on the Lakers, I think as a rookie, like I remember watching him in summer league, thinking like this guy's a dog. Like he defends. And Lakers never really played them, but like kudos to the Grizzlies as always. They're so good at finding that undrafted, like hidden talent, and they've made Pippen into really a great bench player. So that's a great shout. I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, kind of to continue on that point, Finn. I feel like last year was a little bit of a blessing in disguise with all the injuries. They're able to find a guy like Scottie Pippen and see what the impact he brings. Or even on top of that, like Vince Williams, Gigi Jackson. Obviously, even more being bad allowed them to draft like Zach Edey, develop Jaren Jackson and his offensive game. You know, the
Mhm.
big boom that we're seeing from him scoring wise this season I think could be attributed to him being a first option by like last year from all of those injuries. So, you know, like you said, shout out to the Grizzlies for really doing it right. Even though it seems like it was a disaster season last year, they were able to still find, positives in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once they can get like one more guy, maybe consolidate a little bit, they're going to be a true championship favorite because already they're so deep, they're so good. I think they're second in the West now, if I'm not mistaken. Their depth is amazing, and John Moran and Jaren are both amazing players, and so they're going to be scary in the playoffs, man. Their depth is impressive. Speaking of depth and kind of gems on the bench, my next guy is Goga Badatse, and he's an interesting player and a cool player because he stays ready so he doesn't have to get ready. Like he kind of embodies that quote, that mentality, because the Magic have a lot of depth in the front court. Obviously, Paulo, they got Jonathan Isaac, Wendell Carter, they've had other guys, and so Goga hasn't even played every game. But when they have guys go down with injury, he steps into that starting lineup, and especially this year, he's been awesome. I think he's one of the most underrated defenders in the whole league. Uh, Not afraid to try to block any shot, even if that means he might get postered. He's just a big body in there in the paint, great rebounder. So yeah, role player all star for sure.
I was a big fan of Goga. Once Isaiah Hartenstein this offseason signed with the Thunder, I was a big advocate of the Knicks going after him because I felt like he had a lot of those same type of qualities. And, you know, kind of like you mentioned, the rebounding, the defending, rolls hard, you know, can dunk on you. I really like him a lot. And unfortunately, the Magic have really dealt with a lot of injuries this year. So they've been falling in the standings. But whenever I turn on their game, and Goga's playing, it's always fun to see the 110% effort he leaves out there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's just been massive, especially with the injury to Mo Wagner. He's really
Mm-hmm.
filled in that role really nicely. So I think that's definitely a great pick.
Yeah, and so I've been like a big Wendell Carter fan, and obviously Mo Wagner was having a great season before he got hurt. Forgot about him. But do you guys think Goga is Orlando's best big man? I'm curious what you think.
Best fitting, maybe I would say, like with their defensive culture and his kind of like dirty work, put his head down type of mentality. I think he could fit best in the starting lineup when you have a lot of your offense coming from Apollo or a Franz. I know offense as a whole is a little bit of a struggle from them, so you might want to lean a little bit more towards a Wendell Carter or a Mo Wagner that gives you those offensive punches. But I mean, we're talking about role players and stuff and fitting into your role. Goga, he might do it best out of anyone on that team.
Yeah, I think that's a good distinction there that he's the best fit in big. I think I would still say Wagner and Carter are a little bit more talented. And I also think that Wagner, when he's healthy, especially the floor spacing that he provides, is pretty big. He does shoot two or three threes a game, so I think that's big for a team that really struggles with shooting. So I might lean Wagner, but I don't think it's a crazy take at all. I think they're all sort of interchangeable. I think Carter's having a little bit of a down year, but I think all three of them are really interchangeable and really good pieces for this defensive-minded Orlando Magic team. So yeah, I think it's a good fit and a good question for sure.
Yeah, I think Goga, he reminds me a little bit of Isaiah Hartenstein, who I know is on your list, Eamon, so we could probably talk about him next. But I think, I mean, we've seen him in the starting lineup, having a lot of great games, playing a lot better, making a huge impact. And I think if he went somewhere where he would be able to play a bigger role more consistently, yes, like New York.
And, you know,
I think there are a lot of teams where he could probably start on or be close to that. I really think we could see him erupt as like an all defense caliber center, just someone that a lot of guys talk about, a lot of people talk about. So I think he's Orlando's best big, but shout out Mo Wagner, he's a dog.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you brought up the Hartenstein comparison, which I think is a really good one. We can get into Hartenstein. I think he's probably been the best role player in the league in my eyes this season. He's just making such an impact for this Oklahoma City Thunder team who's been just so dominant, and especially with Chet Holmgren, he did return recently, but missing several months of the season. I think Hartenstein's just been huge, and he was a great pickup for them in the offseason. He's just an incredible rebounder, screen setter, passer. He just has incredibly well-rounded skill set, and I'm just a huge fan of his game. Thunder are kind of like the Grizzlies in the same way that I was having trouble picking one player. I wanted to go maybe Lou Dort, Cason Wallace. Those are just some guys I'm a big fan of as well, but I ultimately went iHeart. I just think his impact is undeniable. He's second in the league in screen assists with 4.9 a game, which I think is super impressive. Sixth in the league in rebounding, 12.1 rebounds a game. And then he's in the 99th percentile for defensive estimated plus minus and 97th overall. So I think his impact is just undeniable, especially for a team that's been so dominant.
Yeah, and shout out the Thunder for really empowering him offensively. Because we saw with the Knicks what he could do defensively, rebounding the ball. We saw little like sparks of him being like a playmaker out of the post and stuff like that. But I mean, you mentioned the screen assist numbers. They'll run the DHOs top of the key through him, the pick and roll with J Dub or Shea, and then on that short roll, he's got the like no one can guard that little float push shot he got. He's shooting a crazy number on that. The playmaking of the passing in the short roll too. I feel like the Thunder really made it an emphasis to make him part of their offense. I know, like you said, Chet has been out for basically the whole season. They just now are starting to play together. I'm super excited to see how that really works out in these next coming games and then in the playoffs too. Like if they could really get that lineup going, I don't know how anyone's going to be able to stop them.
Yeah, iHeart's little floater reminds me a bit of what Rashawn Holmes used to be able to do with the Kings. It's kind of a random shout, but he had that same push shot in the bag. But no, I mean, I love, to your point, I love how OKC uses iHeart as a passer and as a hub. I love that style of basketball with like a center who can pass, obviously like Jokic, Sabonis do it. And so I think seeing him play next to Chet is going to be like, it's going to be scary for the rest of the league because all the things Chet can do as a shooter and a cutter and a passer himself, I think like they can put him and iHeart in actions together, and that's gonna be a scary pairing. And so, I mean, shoot, with all those guys healthy, man, OKC, that's gotta be the championship favorite, I think, and iHeart's a big part of that.
I'll roll on to my next guy right here. I have Royce O'Neal. I feel like he's one of the most underrated role players in the NBA. He can shoot, defends. I think his playmaking is super underrated as well. And he's just been a winner no matter where he is, whether it's Utah or Brooklyn, now in Phoenix. He just hit a big shot that sent him to overtime against the Trailblazers, I think that was a few games ago. And he just comes out there and, like we said, we're talking about role players fitting their role. He's like the typical 3-and-D type of guy, only 6'4", but plays way bigger than that. Hustles. I love how he's been able to win no matter where he is and impact that winning.
Yeah, honestly, I'm surprised to hear Royce is only 6'4". I guess I kind of thought he was a little taller than that. To your point, there he goes. Yeah, I mean he's just as steady as it gets. I feel like he like every season, year in and year out, he's the guy who's shooting like around 40% from three, 38% from three. You can always rely on him to hit those open shots. He stood out to me, like you mentioned, since his Brooklyn days, as the guy who just makes the right pass, and obviously he can guard multiple positions, hold up on the wing, and I think in the playoffs, Phoenix will be able to rely on him to cover some of the bigger stars they'll face potentially, like an Anthony Edwards. I mean, no one can really guard Ant, but yeah, Royce is awesome. He's a great role player for Phoenix.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a great one. He just sort of has that classic 3-and-D skill set, and then to your point, he offers a little bit more than people give him credit for as a playmaker. And I'm also very surprised that he's only 6'4". I definitely thought he was closer to 6'6". But yeah, definitely an awesome player. And I feel like it's just important to give him a shout out, especially the Suns aren't having the best season, but he's really been a bright spot for that team, and he can really just fit in with any team. So I think that's definitely a great pick.
Yeah, and then so transition from that, I'd love to talk about another wing who can fit anywhere, do a little bit of everything. You talked about only being able to fit one Thunder in. Well, I got another one for you. That is the man who saved basketball, Aaron Wiggins. Um, I mean, he is just having an awesome year, especially as of late. He put up what, 41 points against the Kings on the night of the Luka trade, when totally overshadowed. But since then, he's just been on a tear at multiple 20 balls, I think. Um, his shooting is great. His cutting is even better. He can finish. He's been doing a lot off the dribble lately, And so I'd really love to see him in a bigger role eventually. I think I wrote about him recently and I mentioned that I think in a bigger role he could kind of be like a Mikal Bridges type or maybe like a Cam Johnson. He reminds me of a guy who can kind of oscillate between on and off the ball. He can catch and shoot for you. He can get to the rim. He can pass a little bit. So yeah, I mean he's just having a great year, huge for the Thunder, and I think he'd be great on any team. Start in a lot of places.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great one, and it's just so impressive how OKC's been able to integrate so many players into that offense. And been really impressed with Wiggins' shot creation. I felt like I hadn't seen that in the past, but this year that's definitely been on full display, and it's just so impressive how everyone's really able to eat in that offense. And I think Mark Daigneault deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that.
I've been most impressed with his 3 point volume increase. He's like almost doubled it from last year, and then his rookie season it was even lower than that. And he's been able to keep that high efficiency up there while increasing that volume. I guess kind of like to your point, Finn, where you're saying you would like to see him in a bigger role. He's showing us that even when he has more opportunities, he's still able to stay as efficient. So yeah, that would be cool. I don't mean we're talking about how deep OKC is. I don't know if he'll be able to find that opportunity in with the Thunder. But wherever it is, whenever it happens, I'll be excited to watch.
Yeah, when he's traded to the Bucks for Giannis in a couple of years and he's the second option, we'll see how good he is. Yeah. I kind of think he reminds me a little bit of Jalen Williams, just like a light version, J-Dub light. I mean, the way he can like score in the mid-range, pass a little bit. He's crafty. He's not like super fast or bouncy, but he's got a great handle for a wing. Kind of crazy that OKC has two J-Dubs.
Yeah, I definitely like that comp. I just think he's so versatile and he's always comfortable with the ball in his hands. And I think it's really impressive how Sam Presti has just continued to find the same prototype of players and they all really fit well together. And it's just been an awesome job, top to bottom, from OKC.
I'll move on to my next guy here, Tari Eason. I've been a big fan of the Rockets. They've been one of my favorite teams to watch this season, and especially early on. One of my favorite parts of watching the Rockets, no matter who they were playing, what the score was, it was when Tari Eason and Amen Thompson came off that bench and checked into the game. Obviously, now Amen is starting, and he's really kind of taken on a player of his own type of thing. But when you talk about Tari, he comes in and just gives 110% effort. The one thing that comes to mind when I think of Tari Eason was early in this season, they had that big comeback against the Golden State Warriors where they were down like 30 something points, came back to force overtime. They ended up losing that game, but in that big 30-point comeback, Tari Eason was probably the main catalyst of that. And there was this one time, I think it was like mid fourth quarter, Ime Udoka called a timeout, called for the sub for Tari Eason, and he went to that bench and just collapsed his body, went limp, like panting, gasping for air, and like I just love to see that from a player where he touches that court and he's going to give it 100%, whether that's defense, getting those steals, getting out in transition, blocking shots, rebounding the ball, offensive rebounds, going back up with it, effort plays. It's Tari Eason. That's the guy I want when I need an effort play.
Yeah, I think not only is that type of energy exactly what you want from a guy off the bench, I think that is exactly what Ime Udoka wants from his players. He's been a huge part of the culture that Houston's establishing on the defensive end. So yeah, he's having a great year. That's a great shout again.
Yeah, for sure. His energy is just totally off the charts, and it's really crazy. He makes a big impact defensively, obviously, and then as a rebounder, he's been huge. I think when I look at that Rockets team, I believe they're top three in defense still, and I feel like him and Thompson have really been the catalyst of that. And it's really been awesome to watch just two elite win defenders, and then throw Dylan Brooks into that mix as well. Just their win defense and their versatility is really incredible. So it's definitely been a great watch.
Eamon, you want to drop your next guy?
Yeah, I'll go. I got Keon Ellis of the Sacramento Kings. I just view him as just a win and roll player who can fit in next to any team. I was really disappointed earlier in the season he wasn't getting too many minutes, but since Mike Brown was fired, he really has cracked the rotation and he's been a really crucial part of their team. And in turn, they've really sort of turned their season around and they're climbing up the standings of the West again. And I think Keon Ellis has been really crucial to that. Just a really classic 3-and-D player. He offers elite catch and shoot shooting. He's shooting 44% from beyond the arc, which is really impressive. And then defensively, he's incredibly impactful, both as a point of attack defender and also as a guy who can guard some wins. So I think his versatility and his defense and his shooting has been really important for the Sacramento Kings team that really lacks all of that. So I think he's been crucial for them. I'm really interested to see. Obviously, we've seen a few games with Levine, but sort of how this plays out, particularly down the stretch. Is Keon Ellis going to continue to close? Because I think he really should, and he's just so crucial to that team that I think it's hard to pull him from that starting lineup. But at the same time, who's going to go to the bench? Are you going to put Malik Monk on the bench to finish games, who's been just an incredible spark plug for them, one of their better shot creators? Are you going to pull Keegan Murray, who's one of your better forwards and has a lot of front court size, which they kind of lack? I'm really interested to see how Sacramento navigates that these next few months.
Yeah, I think that'll kind of be like a night to night basis thing, I feel like, because not only is Keon Ellis like you mentioned exactly what the Kings need. I know myself, I believe Jacob and many others before the season were advocating for Keon to start for the Kings over Kevin Herter, who was starting for a while before he got traded. So he's exactly what they need. But also, like Malik Monk, like you mentioned, is great. Obviously, you don't want to bench Zach LaVine in the clutch. Keegan Murray is a guy who also gives them a lot of defense and shooting and size as well. So you can put him on more of like the Kevin Durant type, like the opposing wing. So I think it'll kind of just depend maybe on who's having a good night, but definitely it will be tough to keep Keon out of there, especially because, like you mentioned, his catch and shoot ability is so great. When you've got DeMar cooking down the stretch like he did against Dallas the other night, you want a guy like Keon spotting up next to him for when the doubles come. So yeah, Keon is just phenomenal role player. I'm so glad to see him playing more now. I think Mike Brown deserved to be fired for benching him. No, not actually, but yeah, having a great year. That's a great shout. Great stuff.
Yeah, I think you guys hit
Um,
on it pretty perfectly. I feel like it would be in between a Malik Monk or a Keegan Murray to see who would swap out Keegan or Keon Ellis for to close out those games. It's tough because you would want that shot creation from Monk and that size from Murray, but the way that Keon Ellis defends, I mean, it's really hard to keep him off that court.
Yeah, I think the nice thing is that you have DeMar and now you have Levine as well, and you did have Fox. Those guys usually dominate the ball down the stretch in terms of creation, and so like Malik Monk's playmaking is huge all game. But I think down the stretch when you're letting DeMar kind of do work in ISO, that you can afford to move Monk to the bench and let Keon rock out off in the off ball and defense role. But yeah.
Fair point.
And then so I'll move into my final guy then. I'm a Bucks fan for those at home, and so I'm gonna go with a little homer pick, and that is AJ Green, Derry Bird. Like seeing all these other teams like Miami especially, who's been a Bucks rival, get all these like undrafted gems, just finding guy after guy, Caleb Martin, Gabe Vincent, Duncan Robinson. To finally get one of those guys has just been so awesome, such a great feeling, especially since the Bucks have missed on so many draft picks recently. So AJ Green has just been huge for us this year with his shooting. Doc, it's been great to see Doc trust him as a guy who we can lean on when we need shot making, and also his defense has just been huge. It's been better this year than it has been in his career. He's not amazing, but like he can really move his feet, keep up with guys on the perimeter, just do his job, do like technical stuff right. Really a 3-and-D guy, and so he's just been huge for us as a role player.
I thought it was funny, you mentioned the 3 and D role. Wasn't it like a month or even longer than that where he didn't even attempt a 2 point shot, right? That was this year that happened. Crazy to think about that in today's NBA you can do that without attempting a 2 point shot. That just goes to show the sharpshooter that AJ Green really is. Shout out Derry Bird.
Yeah. To that point, actually, I would love to see more like off the dribble stuff from AJ Green, specifically getting into that mid range. Like, obviously, it's amazing when he's shooting 49% from three, and that's like literally all he's taking. But I think you're really starting to see specialists kind of die in today's NBA. Going back to Duncan Robinson, who I mentioned, that's a guy who fell out of Miami's rotation for a while because he struggled on defense, couldn't really do much off the dribble. But then we saw him in the 2023 finals run into the following season really work on like getting to the rim, finishing, going off the dribble, attacking closeouts. And so I think eventually at least seeing some like one dribble, two dribble pull ups from AJ Green would make him even better in one of the premier role players in the league because he already is so valuable with his shooting and his improved defense.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm really happy you brought up the defensive impact that he makes because I feel like a lot of people can sort of watch him and they see a white guy that can shoot and they just don't
Mhm.
think he's going to be a good defender. But he was really impressive, and I specifically remember during that NBA Cup run, the impact he made on defense really surprised me in some ways, and I was very impressed by it.
I feel like Sam Hauser kind of fits in that same category too, where people don't give him as much credit as he deserves. Not that he's locking you down, but he's not just the stereotypical white shooter can't defend type of thing. A lot of people
Yeah,
seem to fall into that category.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Hauser, as a Celtics fan, I can attest to it. He constantly gets attacked throughout the game, but he generally holds up really well, and he's typically in the right position, and he does make somewhat of a positive impact on that end of the floor for sure.
Yeah, when will teams learn, man? Like justice for white boy shooters. Sam Hauser's been like low key clamping up for years, and teams still attack him. I guess like if it's between Drew Tatum, Jalen Brown, and Sam Hauser, I know who I would want to attack. But like, he's just another reason why Boston's so good because you really can't attack anybody, and then he shoots it so well as well. And so that's a nice honorable mention for this list because even though he started this year slow, he's another super valuable player for the Celtics, as
Yeah,
Eamon knows.
and as you said, he did start the year a little slow, but as of late, he's really been picking it up, and the shots fully came back, which is really awesome to see. He was dealing with a back injury earlier in the year.
Eamon, I'm out of guys, so I believe you have what, one more guy?
Yeah,
Jacob, did you give all your guys?
I'll go with mine then. Musa Diabate. They traded Nick Richards. They tried to trade Mark Williams. I'm not too sure exactly how that's going to work out with him being back on the team now. But Musa Diabate has really stepped up at that center position. He reminds me a lot of a smaller Mitchell Robinson. Early on, really raw offensive rebounder. Can't really do too much else offensively, and I think that's where he needs to really take those steps, is becoming more of a threat in the pick and roll, especially playing alongside a guy like LaMelo Ball that loves to operate like that. But just for what he is right now and just getting those extra possessions, he was huge in their win against the San Antonio Spurs a few nights ago. I really like what I see from Musa.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't have the exact numbers for this written down, but off the dome, I saw recently Musa Diabate is something like 200th in points per game, but he's top 10 in offensive rebounds per game. To your point, just like absolute, I mean, kind of like a rebounding specialist to some degree, not necessarily because he can do some of the little bit big man things like catching lobs and defending the rim, but like he's had an absolutely insane video game year. For my blog, the Bench Mob blog, I do this thing called the Bench Mob All Stars, where I kind of highlight usually like undrafted two-way type guys, just like end of bench players who nobody really gives recognition to, but is having good seasons. And Musa Diabate recently made the 2025 squad. He's just had a yeah, claps for that. He's having an awesome year. It'll be interesting to see. I doubt he does, but like if he can keep on starting or at least playing a ton of minutes, even when Mark Williams comes back. I know the Hornets are contesting the cancellation of that trade, so Mark Williams could be gone. And I know I'd rather have Diabate than Nurkic. So we'll
Facts.
see. We'll see where Charlotte goes with that. But yeah, Diabate's having an awesome year. I'm so glad you brought him up, Jacob.
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely a great one. And I'm just happy we're shining a little bit of light onto guys that aren't on necessarily the best teams, but they're making a really strong impact. And I think Diabate is the perfect example of that. I also think it's interesting just with the Mark Williams trade and the Nick Richards trade that you guys mentioned, how it just really speaks to Charlotte's confidence in Diabate moving forward, especially. I feel like Williams, it looks like he's going to return to the Hornets right now. However, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they end up moving him in the summer, especially just how weird this whole trade saga has been. And I think Diabate can sort of be that starting center for them moving forward. So that's definitely huge. And I'm excited to see his development. He's only 23, see how he develops on offense a little bit. So yeah, definitely a guy who's making an impact right now, but also someone who is only going to continue to get better just given his age. All right. So for my last one, I'm going to go with another young player. I'm going to go with Julian Champagnie of the Spurs. Really sort of an underrated player on the Spurs team. I feel like last year he didn't have as big of a role. He was only getting 19 minutes a game. Now he's up to 24 minutes a game. And at the same time, he's upped his scoring average from 6.8 to 10 points a game. So I think that jump is really, really huge for him. And I think it just speaks to how well he fits next to Wemby as sort of that classic 3-and-D player. Has a lot of size as a 6'8" forward. He can really just fit in with this team nicely. And I think he's going to be an important part of their future. he's just a great catch and shoot shooter and a very versatile defender. He can guard several different positions. So I just think he's the perfect fit for Wemby right now and going forward. So I'm really looking forward to continuing watching him grow with this Spurs team. And I think he's, like I said, just a perfect fit for this team.
One of the biggest issues that I see with the Spurs right now, obviously they're not anywhere near the level of team that they want to be when they're contending. But right now, one of their biggest issues is volume 3-point shooting, and Julian Champagnie really comes in and tries to shoulder a lot of that load of just being a super high volume 3-point shooter guy. And when I was looking up just stats and stuff, I didn't realize he was 6'8". I don't know why. I thought he was a little bit smaller than that, but being 6'8", you can run him at the three, run him at the four, and he just brings that shooting, that spacing that every team really needs.
Yeah, Jacob, just curious. Obviously, you're a New York guy. How much do people like in your area or you root for St. John's where he went to? Because I know there's been some buzz about them recently.
Yeah, so actually my roommate is a big St. John's fan. I don't really watch too much college basketball. I'm kind of just all the way into the NBA.
Mhm.
But when he has games on, I watch. And big shout out to Rick Pitino for really helping bring that program back to where it needs to be, and getting New York basketball back to highlights right now. They're almost a top 10 seed, right? They're ranked number 10 or something like that. I
I
think they're
think
in the
so.
top
I
10.
don't follow college ball either, but I was just curious. And I was
Yeah,
wondering if he knows that Julian Champagnie has been like going crazy. Well, not going crazy, but playing well.
yeah, no, I definitely made sure to let him know because there's not a lot of Johnnies in the NBA. So when I saw that Julian was one of them, I made sure to let him know so he has someone to root for.
Yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, so Julian is a guy like when he shoots it, I think it's going in. And he really, the percentage doesn't necessarily match how good of a shooter I think he actually is. His shot looks good, and we've seen him like get hot and knock down a ton of threes, dating back to his rookie year in 2023. I remember in like late April, this is when the Spurs were still bad, pre-Wemby, like Julian had a few 20-point games where he was just flying off screens, letting them fly. And from like then I knew like that's a guy the Spurs should keep around. So it's been really cool to see him even be like a starter at some points and just be a guy that the Spurs can trust and rely on next to Wemby.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he can offer just a little bit more than we've seen just as a shot creator and more of a movement shooter. He's mostly been a spot up shooter, but I'd like to see the Spurs sort of explore that a little bit more. And I think we can really see that over the next few years because he is still very young. So I think that's definitely possible to see for sure.
Right, well, I would love to make a couple honorable mentions here, and we don't have to get in depth to any of them, but if you guys want to talk about some, you can stop me, and I'd love to hear if you guys had other people on your mind. If I could make the six players and not five, I would have loved to talk about Tumani Kamara, talking about like showing love to guys who are on bad teams like Musa Diabate. I mean, the Blazers, although lately they've been like pretty awesome, winning a lot of games out of nowhere, which has been fun. Tumani Kamara, he kind of reminds me of like a Herb Jones because he's just an insanely versatile defender, strong, can cover every position, make blocks, just really do it all out there. And he's made a lot of leaps as a shooter too. So he's my main honorable mention, great player. And then other than that, I had campaign written down. Knicks guy. He takes some crazy heat checks, but he's been a fun microwave for them.
Yeah,
I had
it's really
Ochai. Oh yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
real quick, just to talk about campaign. It's really funny because on
Absolutely.
one night he'll check in, he'll get 4 minutes in the first half, shoot like 0 for 2, not like ever touch the court again. And then the next night he'll go off for 17 points and a 12-point run of himself, just flamethrower like you said, just come off the bench and hit like 3, 4 threes. And especially when it's in MSG. He's a fan favorite because of the ability to just get hot like that. And yeah, he's been very up and down, I'll say. But I mean, as a role player, he's fantastic to have off your bench.
Yeah, I kind of wish he could have been able to do that in Milwaukee, or that we would have given him a bigger chance to do that because I'm a fan of him. And then yeah, so other than that, I had Jalen Smith from the Bulls, Gershon Yabusele from Philly, and then Amir Coffey from the Clippers, and also Gabe Vincent, who since like December or so has looked a lot more like the version of Gabe Vincent we saw for the Heat in their finals run in 2023 after being someone that Lakers fans just clowned. But yeah, it was a lot of fun to think about role player all stars, man. There's a lot of good ones out there, guys who don't get love. So I loved your guys' lists. I love the guys on my list. This was a great topic.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get into a few of my honorable mentions. I had Denny Avdia as an honorable mention. I just sort of thought he exceeded the role player threshold, even though he's technically below the points per game and he's never made an All-Star team. I think he's been maybe the Blazers' best player this season. He just makes really well-rounded impact as a rebounder, versatile defender, playmaker. And he's been one of my favorite players for a while now, honestly. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Denny. I'm also going to give a shout out to Asar Thompson. Think Amen Thompson, he definitely gets a lot of love and rightfully so. And he's more so looking like a future star, so we couldn't really include him on this list. But Asar Thompson's been extremely impactful as well in the Pistons. Just a really great energy guy, great defender, guards multiple positions, can handle the ball, play make a little bit, and then really strong rebounder as well. I think Pistons sort of have a mini terror twins of their own with him and Ron Holland coming off the bench. So I like that Pistons team, and I'm a big fan of Asar. So I definitely wanted to give him a shout out. Dyson Daniels is another guy. I feel like he's gotten a ton of love this year, so kind of didn't include him for that reason. But he's been super impactful, especially next to Trey, giving them a little bit more size in that backcourt. A guy that can really defend at a high level, extremely disruptive in the passing lanes, leading the league in steals, making that well-rounded impact. But is also taking a pretty big leap offensively, especially as a finisher. The shot's still not there, but we're really seeing more so what he can do as a shot creator and then a little bit of a playmaker. So he's having an awesome season. I think he definitely deserves to be in most improved player conversation. So definitely wanted to give a shout out to Dyson Daniels.
Yeah, going back, I love your Jacob. Then sorry, you can if you were getting into your honorable mentions, but I loved your Detroit Terror Twins point because Ron Holland is another guy. I mean, he's a rookie, young star, and hasn't had like an amazing year statistically or anything that jumps off the page. But he was one of the like top two, three prospects for this draft. I think he does a lot, and it's been awesome to see him buy in on defense like Asar with the athleticism, with the dog, and I'm like just he really fits their culture. I think so. Him and Asar both great players. It'll be interesting to see. If they're able to play next to each other going forward. I know Ron Holland has a little bit more of like a shooting potential than Nassar does. Because if you could put both of those guys out there together, like next to Cade and next to maybe a Malik Beasley, that's a scary lineup for Detroit.
And I'll quickly go through my honorable mentions too. I had Corey Kispert on here. I feel like he gets overlooked a lot because the Wizards have, in his whole career, not been good. So I'm really interested to see what maybe team he goes to next, whether that's trade. I'm not sure what his contract looks like in when he'll be a free agent or anything. When he's on a winning team, a playoff team, contending team, I think a lot of people will be able to see the value he brings, specifically shooting the ball. He's been one of the best shooters in the league for a few seasons now. So I wanted to give a quick shout out to him. I also had on here Torian Prince, who Finn, he's been having a great season shooting the ball for the Bucks. As much shooting as you can around Giannis. That's what the Bucks are kind of going for, and he's been great for that. I also had Precious
I'd love to
Achiuwa.
talk about Prince quick. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, you're good.
He kind of reminds me a bit of like Royce O'Neal. He's not quite as good defensively, but he hits the shots, and I've been impressed with his ball movement. He's had a few like decently big assist games lately. I just think he's been a super awesome glue guy, and yeah, he's shooting the crap out of it. So that's a great shout out. Love to hear more Bucks stuff.
Yeah. And then rounding out the list, I had Precious Achiuwa. I don't want to go too far into it because I feel like we've been talking about a few different Knicks here as, filling in as our backup big, sometimes running four, sometimes running the five. He's been great defensively and rebounding the ball wise. We had talked a little bit about Sam Hauser before, too. I had him on this list, and then also Casey Wallace to round out my honorable mentions.
For sure. I think those are some good picks. I specifically like the Precious and Case on Wallace pick. I'm a big Case on Wallace guy. He's definitely one of my favorite players from the 2023 draft. So I really like that one. Quick question about Precious, especially as a Knicks fan. With Mitchell Robinson coming back at some point this season, what role do you sort of see Precious playing once he returns?
So I think he'll mostly be a backup five. I know it's kind of looking like the Knicks are looking to run a lot of Towns and Mitchell Robinson together. I don't think that they'll start. I think the starting five will stay the same, but a lot of those minutes I think will just have Cat be that power forward. I like having the double bigs of Cat and Precious, but if we were doing like a Mitch and Precious, I don't like that spacing at all. I think it's way too clunky offensively. So it does make it a little bit difficult when, you look at the Knicks bench and they have two really small guards and two bigs as, some of their best guys coming off that bench. could make some lineups a little bit weird. But as long as there's not too much of Mitch and Precious on the court together, I'll be fine with it.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely makes a lot of sense, and I'm really sort of intrigued to see some of those double big lineups. I think that will really benefit Cat, even though he's having a terrific season. I think that will really help him a lot, specifically on the defensive end, sort of what we saw, not obviously to the same degree, but playing next to Rudy Gobert, I think really helped him. So I think once Mitch returns to the lineup, I think that will really help him. All right. Any last thoughts before we wrap it up here?
Just that I could probably sit here all night and keep naming good players. So this was a great topic, and I really appreciate you bringing me on. It was a lot of fun to talk about some role players with you guys.
Yeah, no, it was great. Thanks for the invite again, and hope you have a lot of success on this podcast. I'll be sure to be watching.
Yeah,
Yeah,
ditto to that.
yeah, appreciate it, guys. Yeah, I definitely think to Finn's point, I could have listed 50 plus guys. The league's just so deep right now. It's really awesome to see. Before we head out, guys, do you want to plug any of your work just so our listeners can tap in?
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel, Jacoblocks, make NBA content. I'll try to cover pretty much every team, year-round content, topical. So if you enjoyed this podcast, you'll probably enjoy some of my videos. So make sure you go check that one out.
Yeah, absolutely check out Jacob's YouTube. He's someone I watch consistently just to keep up on things that I might miss when I'm watching the league. And so then, yeah, I have a blog, benchmobblog.com, and definitely check that out to hear about some more role player all-stars because I just released my bench mob all-star team like I mentioned before recently, and I tend to talk about other bench guys on there as well as general league coverage. And then I do write for another site, Utility Sports, as well now, and you can find all my work on my Twitter, Finley Kuehl. So yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it, guys. Make sure you check out their work. They're really terrific. So appreciate it, guys, and take care.
yeah. Take care, man. Have a great night. Thanks for having us on.
For
Yeah,
sure.
thank you.
You too, boys.